So I'm going to hand over to Marion. Marion Steward she lives in Auckland, New Zealand, and is a long-time reader of the Urantia book. Marion started reading in 1980. She's very interested in diversity in societies, especially language and culture, and enjoys researching ideas and gaining new information and knowledge. She's been teaching English as a second language for over 30 years to adult immigrants from a wide range of cultures, so has first-hand experience of the variations in thought, beliefs, worldviews, and customs among different people, and the challenges that these differences can pose in groups that need to work together. So thank you, Marion, for being with us today. I'm going to make you a co-host so you can share your screen.
Oh, the power. Thank you, Mirindy. And hello, everyone. For those of you on the other side of the world, well done for hanging on in there. I'll try it. Well, maybe I will send you off to sleep and that will be a good thing. No, I'll try not to do that. I want to talk about diversity. I started this, when I started preparing this, I was thinking about unity and uniformity, and then I often go down rabbit holes of word searching, because that's my work. So then I went, oh, diversity is the opposite of uniformity. So I explored diversity, and so here is what I want to focus on: the challenges of diversity, which I have discovered are a never-ending adventure. So I want to talk about how pervasive diversity is throughout the grand universe, exactly what challenges it presents to all of us as we go about our daily lives, and how important it is to learn how to deal with it here in preparation for our future universe career. So I'm going to start by talking, this is all big picture. There's so much of it that I couldn't possibly cover it in even a couple of hours, but I want to sort of paint a big picture of just how far-reaching diversity is in the universe. I'll talk about outer diversity, how things vary in appearance and form, and then I'll have a look too at, because this is a more challenging one, the inner diversity, how people can vary in mental, emotional, social, racial, cultural ways, and how personality sort of influences all of that. And then I'll discuss how diversity is a part of God's plan for the universe and is never ending. And then I'll move on to have a brief look at how this presents challenges, but I don't think this will need a lot of explanation. The difficulties caused by racial, cultural, and personal differences are very, very evident in the world today. And then finally, I'll have a look at what Jesus had to say. It's sort of simple to say, but really, really hard to do. And then discuss in a little bit how we might apply his advice in very broad terms to our own lives. So, outer diversity. I thought, well, in keeping with the approach of the Urantia book, I'll start from the center and work my way outwards, because they begin there. So, obviously a star picture. Havona, the central universe surrounding the Isle of Paradise. It consists of 1 billion worlds, as we all know, and each one of it, each world is unique. Here's a quote that sort of exemplifies this. The architecture, natural embellishment, morontial structures, and spirit creations are exclusive and unique on each sphere. Every world is a place of everlasting beauty and is wholly unlike any other world in the central universe. You read these words, but then when I was focusing on it from this particular perspective, I'm going, wow, 1 billion worlds, and every single world is completely different from all of the others. It was quite mind-boggling when I explored this part. So then when I moved from the central universe to the local universes, this theme of diversity is continued. Each creator son, I didn't actually count how many there were, but I'm sure there's lots and lots and lots of them. Each creator son is unique, diverse, exclusive, and original in nature as well as in personality. And since they are the architects and makers of the life plans of their respective realms, this very diversity ensures that their domains will also be diverse in every form and phase of Michael-derived living existence, which may be created or subsequently evolved therein. There is no sameness in any part of creation. So all of the spiritual beings created to run our universe and every other living creature on every planet will be a bit different to each other and different from equivalent beings in other local universes. So that's the sort of higher levels. When we come to mortals, ascendant beings, the same approach, constant variety, is very evident, and probably more so on our planet since we're an experimental one. The Urantia book tells us that there are basic life patterns, but lots of variation. 7 distinct physical types, as well as thousands upon thousands, and I'm quoting here, of minor variants of these 7 outstanding differentiations. So even in the way people breathe or don't breathe, whether they function primarily on the land or the air or the sea. I always found that very fascinating when I first started reading the Urantia book, to find out that there were intelligent beings on some planet that were like mermaids and who flew around in the air. So, oh yes, I want to go there. That sounded very interesting. And then there also have variations in how many brains we have and how that sort of functions. And of course, on top of that, the different races. Every planet, well, actually it said most planets, have at least 3 and up to 6 different colored races. I don't think I need to talk about all the diversity that can cause. So moving from outer diversity to inner diversity. Of course, the big one there that ensures that every single intelligent being in the universe isn't like anybody else is personality. This is my favorite quote. Look, personality is unique, absolutely unique. It is unique in time and space. It is unique in eternity and on paradise. It is unique when bestowed. There are no duplicates. It is unique during every moment of existence. It is unique in relation to God. As someone who teaches English, and if a student of mine had written a sentence like this, I would probably say there's a bit too much repetition. But I do have to say that this repetition really hammers home this idea of absolute uniqueness. And that's what governs everything. And then, this influences all the other parts of anybody's lives: race, family, culture, experiences. I found this jigsaw puzzle that had, I don't think these are all of them, but they certainly show most of the aspects, I guess, of a person where variation is evident. Some of these are obvious: language, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation. These ones here are quite obvious. People think in different ways. That's probably quite obvious. Some people think analytically, some people think creatively, and that of course alters or influences their perspectives on almost everything. Well, this is not original to me, but when I first found it, I noted that there were ethnicity and race as being 2 separate elements. So I explored that a little bit. The simplest definitions I could find were that race is a sort of relates to physical traits, while ethnicity refers to a broader range of commonalities in a group, including race, but also culture and religion, and any one of a number of other things. Though I think these definitions are quite fluid, and it would depend which dictionary you went and looked at. So, diversity is part of God's plan. A search of the UB showed diversity was everywhere from the beginning right down to us lowly creatures. It's a linchpin of the divine plan of creation. After all, one way of looking at creation itself was God diversifying him or herself. I do struggle with the pronouns. The first source and center went, okay, I'm going to diversify myself. So that was where it all started. And this prioritizing of individuality, uniqueness, and constant diversification pervades the universe. I found a number of mentions, I don't have them here, where people said, well, they created a group of beings that even when they were created following a particular pattern, somehow between the creation and the actual coming into being, they became individualized, as though the first source and center had a hand in there and went, no, I don't want them to all be the same. I want a little bit of individuality here. I was very interested in the discussion earlier today about trinitized sons, because I find the example of creature trinitized sons, I guess, a major example of this constant diversification, where two, I think, mortal finalities come up with a concept, an original concept, which no one has thought of before, and then go through this trinitization process and come up with a unique being. And this again is a constant process. So it was right there at the beginning, and it's never ending, and it's happening in every kind of corner of the universe. And won't stop. Here's where I got my never ending from. It's altogether possible that the continued diversification of the original reality of the first source and center may proceed onward and outward throughout age upon age, on and on, into the faraway and inconceivable stretches of absolute infinity. So never ending, the diversity just carries on and becomes wider and richer and all those other things. So I want to focus in on how that might, affect us. And the part that I'd like to talk about is how we have to work together. God creates the universe to be richly and eternally diverse, intentionally ensures that each living being of the uncountable and ever-increasing number of beings is unique in some way, and then also ensures or requires that these beings have to work together in teams. So this is not an easy task. And people have talked about this in other contexts, that one of the most important lessons to be learned is teamwork. That if in our eternal career, when we're working in all sorts of fascinating places, we won't be working alone. Possibly only the solitary messengers work alone, but everybody else works in teams. Luckily, or thankfully, we have help. So there is initially, certainly there are racial interpreters and they function on our world. They assist the race commissioners, harmonizing the varied viewpoints of the races. And then these racial interpreters continue to operate on the mansion worlds. And until I'd done this research, I'd sort of thought, right, well, you work your way through the mansion worlds, and then you fuse with your adjuster,
and then you're perfect. But I quickly realized, no, this actually isn't the case. So even after you're fused with your adjuster and you forge your way through the local universe and on through the constellation and the 70 training worlds on Urantia, you still need training in how to work with diverse beings. So they say on Jerusalem, you learn to submit the self to the disciplines of group activities and coordinated undertakings. But when you get to Urantia, you are to achieve the real socialization of your evolving morontial personality. So everything up to that point has sort of been beginner level, and now you really got to get stuck into it. This is described in extraordinary detail in the book. Us and the Urantia on Urantia. So first up, there's one of us and 10 of these beings who exist to train us in how to work with diverse beings. So I sort of said, gosh, wouldn't you feel lonely and terribly isolated and things like that? But that's the divine plan. So I'm sure we will get lots of guidance. But it's sort of, and not only do you need to learn how to do this, you're also expected to do it with great cheer. They talk about working in these groups with Urantia, and you need to live happily and work effectively, abide joyfully and cooperate heartily. So yes, there's something to look forward to, possibly. However, here we are, still on our planet. So the races, I think, kind of become less important once we get to Urantia, but this is one thing I feel is the biggest challenge on our planet, but not by any means the only one. So when they were discussing why did they have different races, one reason they gave was to develop human tolerance and altruism. So I just want to look at this idea of tolerance for a little bit. Elsewhere, they say that the material comfort era in which we live is often characterized by intolerance. A little look around us in the world in recent times demonstrates quite a lot of intolerance being showed by lots of groups. Intolerance, defined as the unwillingness to accept views, beliefs, or behavior that differ from one's own. And I'd be the first to put my hand up and go, yes, I have these feelings. No, I don't think, well, it would be a saint if you were never intolerant of anything. Even driving, you can be intolerant of someone else's driving. You know, it's just everywhere. I see myself as a work in progress in this regard. Though the Urantia book says that this intolerance is everlastingly inimical to human progress. These are very strong words, everlastingly inimical. So intolerance is something that we need to face up to and try and overcome, I guess, bit by bit. Unfortunately, we live in a world where intolerance is as pervasive, perhaps caused by all this diversity. If we look again at the jigsaw that shows all of the ways people can be diverse, a lot of these days, people are discriminated against and not tolerated, different religions, certainly sexual orientation, race is a big one, gender, in some countries still, ageism, all of these things, these aspects of diversity are also aspects that trigger intolerance among people that come up against difference and go, I don't like that, I don't understand that, I wish they would be the same as me. Another thing that's I think is increasing intolerance in the world is the fact that diversity is not only increasing, but it's becoming more visible. The internet, social media, you know, it's bringing all these sort of different aspects of people right into your living room, your lounge, your computer room, and so you're going, look at all of those things. Increased migration, refugees, so many countries in the world now that were previously much more homogenous and now having to adjust to groups of people from very different cultures, and that's causing friction. And also the increasing acknowledgement and legal protection of a range of these differences in more and more countries. I guess I'm thinking here of homosexual law reform, same-sex marriages, the legalization of prostitution. These have been things that my students who come from countries in Asia predominantly, when they come to New Zealand and they find out this is legal and that's legal and the other's legal, they're quite shocked. And we often have discussions in class, you know, because they need to talk through that this is wrong and well, why, and you know, and so this kind of highlights for me how those things are increasing the diversity and the challenge to your tolerance levels. What did Jesus say? Because the apostles certainly weren't all on the same page. They had many different views about how to forward the revelation, the Jesus' mission, and there's some good things in the Jesus papers, but it all comes down to, and other people have mentioned this today already, unity, not uniformity. That we're not going to have the same mental outlook. It's different by race, that, you know, right there at the very core, that every race of mankind has its own mental outlook, and therefore the religion of the mind. And here we're just talking religion, but it's also every other thing that you're looking at in life, that you will, you know, not just your racial viewpoint, but all of those other things that were on the jigsaw. In the spiritual world, then it's unity, not uniformity. Unity of experience, uniformity of destiny, but you make full allowance for diversity of belief. Bennett was talking about that just before, that you listen to what people believe, and I think you just have to say, well, you think this way and I think that way, but we both believe in God, like that Cecilia's story just before. I go, yes, absolutely. I think 40 years, no problem in the long span of eternity. Just takes as long as it takes. So you don't have to see alike or feel alike or even think alike in order spiritually to be alike. Having different opinions, I think, is inevitable. The beings in Havona have very diverse opinions about lots of things in the universe. It's seen, I think, as a positive thing, but having the same purpose and the same ideals is how we move forward. But I think, diverse opinions are to be expected and accepted as part of the rich diversity of creation. And when you're with people and you're talking about, religion, or you're in this sort of context where you can say, well, do we both believe in God? Well, then it doesn't matter how, whether you see it differently. But what about if you're not in a context where spiritual unity is relevant, at work, or if you're with people who don't have a belief in God, but yet you still need to do something with them? How then can you find this unity, non-spiritual unity? I know it's fairly obvious. You still need to find a shared purpose and some commonality where I mean, hopefully if you're in a group for a reason, and you can focus on that. In my experience, the 40 years is fine. You know, it's a slow, piece by piece growth, and it can take time. And so now I'm going to tell you a story, since Chris has been promoting telling stories, just from my own life, where I have had there's something I was intolerant of, and then as I slowly became more exposed to it and I was willing to understand it, I managed to change it around, which was an interesting experience. So here in New Zealand, we have a strong focus on biculturalism and multiculturalism. And where I work, as you know, I mean, I work with people from many different cultures, and I also work in a state-funded tertiary institute. So as part of our guiding principles, we place a lot of importance on Polynesian cultural practices. And one of those is that when you have a meeting about anything, then your meeting must open with a prayer and it must close with a prayer. And frequently that's done in Māori or in another Pacific language like Samoan or Tongan or Cook Islands Maori. That's a rock solid thing. And so all of our meetings at work must begin with a prayer and must end with a prayer. And when this first started being the rule back quite some years ago now, I did not like this. I found this really, really hard to even tolerate, you know, and I tried to think, why am I feeling like that? I'm a deeply religious person. I believe in God. I pray. Why am I having such a problem with praying at work before a meeting? And I had to really think it through. And after a while, I realized that it was King, what's his name? It was way back in the English tradition, English history, where the church ruled the state. The Pope told the king what to do. And you know, and then there was the sort of, I don't know, the chucking off, you know, the forming of the Anglican Church, and the Catholic Church was shunted off because the Pope was telling the king what to do. And I kind of absorbed this thing that at work was not a religious thing. You needed to keep the state and the church separate. So when I identified this was why I was struggling with this, it wasn't quite so hard to go along with, though it was still like, you know, I would sit in a meeting and other people would pray, and I'd just sit there and go, okay, can we get on with the meeting now? You know, because it was work, and you know. And then this last year, I started working with a group of Pacific Island lecturers. They were teaching this, you know, and so I was guiding them in how to design assessments and things. And so we met once a week, and every week we had to start the meeting with a prayer and close the meeting with a prayer. And every week it was, you know, sometimes it was the Samoan teacher's turn and sometimes the Tongan teacher's turn. And the Samoan teacher in particular would translate into English. And the opening and close, well, the opening prayer would always go, and bless Marion for all the help that she's given to us. And so after a while I'm going, well, that's actually quite nice to be blessed every week, you know, and because it made me feel warm, and they were bringing in, you know, they were focusing on the unity of the purpose of why we were there, and asking for, you know, I guess I could have thought all our thought adjusters and any spirit helpers to help us achieve the purpose of the meeting. And so over time, I almost came to look forward to it. And then I reached a point where I didn't want to start a meeting until we'd had the prayer. And then the final thing I noticed at the end of last year, one of the last meetings I was chairing at work, I actually did that myself. I opened the meeting with the prayer, and I went, well, some years ago, I wouldn't have ever dreamed that I would have done that. But that, you know, so that slow kind of experience and actually thinking about what purpose did it serve change my intolerance to tolerance and complete acceptance. So that probably took, what, 5 years, which wasn't as, you know, so I really believe it's a you know, things will, you come up with differences and you'll go, I don't know what that's about, you know, it seems strange, why are they doing that, why are they saying that, but over time, if you take the time to figure out what function is it serving, then over time, you know, that intolerance will become tolerance. And you can find that unity and accept the uniformity and get ready for working with all those Urantia or Urantia who will be different in ways I couldn't possibly begin to imagine. So that sums up pretty much what I wanted to share with you today. What I've learned, one of the things I like about making presentations is that I learn such a lot from doing all the research. So I've learned that the universe is extremely diverse in every way by design. It's not an accident. And we need to develop a mindset that is open and accepting of differences to prepare us for our eternal career. And learning to function effectively with diverse beings enriches and expands our abilities and understanding exponentially. They say somewhere in the book how if two creatures work together, then they don't just double their potential, they quadruple the things that they're able to achieve. We'll get help if it gets too hard. You can call on the racial interpreters, maybe not so much here, from each other. And as Jesus taught us, a focus on something that unifies us will help us overcome the innate tendencies of mortal creatures to reject and oppose differences. I don't, you know, it's easy to say, but really hard to do, and you just have to take it piece by piece. And I prepared this presentation, and then I looked again at the invitation email and saw that the theme of this Urantiathon was faith, joy, and peace. I went, So I've managed to fit that in to my final statement. If we have faith in God's eternal plan and work steadfastly to overcome intolerant thoughts and behavior, then with each victory over our own intolerance, we will experience both joy and peace until the next challenge comes along. And I can agree with that from my own experience. That's it. Thank you for listening.
This is Patty from Boise, Idaho. Can you put up that puzzle chart briefly so I can jot down the bottom half of it?
Sure. Sure.
Steward?
Yeah, Ben, did you? Oh, Steward, he was this.
Are you telling me to go?
Yeah.
Okay. Well done, Marion.
I got it. Thank you.
The thing that strikes me, because I've thought about this in several contexts over the last few weeks, is this idea of intolerance and difference and other and all those things that ultimately create the environment that produces wars and, you know, things beyond water and food and whatever all the other reasons are given for that. And it ultimately, though, it is the source of true civilization beyond business, beyond just trying to find some good feelings in our heart, that ultimately to conquer those things, we have to grow. We have to grow towards God. And the only real variant in that, and this world has had the short or the, depending on how you look at it, the long end of the stick, is how much time we spend in that controversial, intolerant, hate, me first, whatever, you know, however you want to describe all those things. How many thousands of years do we stay there? And well, we're still there, yet the leading edge of society is advancing quite well, I think. But there's such a diversity in you know, the breadth of that that swath of evolution that we're living in. So I'll leave it there.
Any listening to like talkback radio will highlight this, which I don't do very often. Maybe I should do it because that would really build up my toleration. Stewart.
Marion, wow. The depth that you dive into is deep. That's really what I first wanted to share with you is I appreciate the clarity of your thought and your analysis and your comprehension, your grasp of what you're dealing with. I think you are well advanced in the psychic circles of understanding the energy of what we are involved with. And I just wanted to say that was my experience to listening to your total presentation. I was so impressed with your dedication to the revelatory perspective. It was truly an honor. Thank you so much. That's really all I wanted to say.
Well, thank you. I'm very pleased that you enjoyed that.
It was brilliant. I misspelled brilliant. My chat.
Oh, I see the chats. Right, supposed to be looking there. I've done this before. It's 1,000 dots. Yes, quite so.
I'm happy to share a story, Marion, if we, I too thought it was brilliant and very, diversity is really big thing for us, especially in my role in a corporate sense in business. There is a lot of changes that I've seen sort of over the last 20 years, 25 years in not just law and regulation, but also cultural progression that I think we've made in sort of how we treat one another and how but it's still that we still have a long way to go, and there's still it's a very hot topic. I'm going through a process at the moment with one of my teams, and this importance of teamwork. They are really struggling as a team. They're a team of 5, and one of them is diversely different. Culturally she's different, she's generationally different, she has a different style about her, and there's some friction in the team because of that, and so helping them navigate those sort of waters is not an easy thing to do. Like, it's not, and there's no silver bullet in how to encourage and teach and guide and coach and help a team move through that and work through that. There's a lot of sensitivities to it, and I don't think I'm an expert, and I definitely don't have the answers, but it's still happening, and it's still very real for us in our day-to-day lives. So I probably just want to share that story. I also, the other interesting part from my perspective, if we're thinking about business and corporate, I have a lot of younger people working in my broader team, and they haven't sort of, I guess, generalizing, which I don't like to do, but they haven't come through, the maturity and the wisdom that age can give them, and they're on the phones talking to, Joe Public, and often have not come across somebody who perhaps doesn't speak English very well, or perhaps doesn't, is older and can't understand what they're saying, or doesn't respond to acronyms and jargon. And so there's sort of this or transgender, and sounds like a man but it's a woman, and all that stuff that they really can struggle with and get themselves in trouble when they're in a customer service sort of role. So that's an interesting topic for sure.
And it can be, it can be really confronting I remember another thing that happened to me quite some years ago, which was such a powerful experience of the other. What one of my colleagues was Samoan, and we went to her house for a barbecue, and she introduced me to her husband, and her husband put his hand out and turned his head around and shook my hand like that. And the effect that had on me was sort of like, what? You know, I mean, it was very, very strange that someone would shake your hand and refuse to look at you. I'd never seen anything like that before, you know, and then when I quietly inquired about it later, he was actually, in Samoan culture, you don't look someone in the eye as a sign of respect, especially if you think someone is a higher status than you. You know, you have to lower your eyes, and you don't look them in the eye, you know, and that's caused many a young chap to not get a job because they're interviewed by a you know, Anglo person who sees looking you in the eye as a sign of honesty and directness, you know, whereas it's, you know, it's challenging and confronting in different cultures. But I've never forgotten that feeling, you know, of utter sort of, I don't know what's going on here, but it feels really strange. And all of my students, you know, who come here, immigrate to New Zealand, feel like that every day. You know, when they first arrive, they don't understand anything until they get that. So it's just, I think, that willingness to go, okay, don't quite understand what that was about. I'm not going to automatically assume he doesn't like me. You know, there must be another reason. I think that. Steward, you have your hand up.
Yes, Marion, thank you. I just wanted to respond to you about the modesty of what was being portrayed there, and the fact that the acknowledgement that, you know, it's just a matter of being modest in any approach that you bring into another person's energy. Be modest, be honest, be candid, be clear, and be a glass house. So I just like that kind of feeling that you expressed with that. So I wanted to share that.
Right, thank you. I thought that it was going to be a good segue into your presentation, Marindi, if you're looking at imagination.
Yeah.
Imagination will just continue to grow the diversity in the universe.
Yeah. One thing that really struck me about your presentation, Marion, is the by design aspect too, right? Like, I think which is sort of about challenges and adversity, and it's by design because it's supposed to be difficult. It's not supposed to be easy to get on with people. We're supposed to find it hard and really work our way through it.
Well, my friend Ian Campbell, who's sitting there, wrote down a quote that he made. What do you remember what you said, Ian, when I practiced my presentation with you? You said, was like, you can't like someone for being different because they're different from, that's a gift from God. And the difference is God's gift, so you can't sort of say, I don't like that. Like, that's a challenging thought.
God-given personality is different. You can't dislike them.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. You just have to work on it. Negative feeling by negative feeling, and work your way through, I think.